Good morning. Great to see everyone today. We're going to look at a topic today that's a little tricky, and we've probably been on both extremes of this spectrum, and that's the idea about how we relate to others. Some questions like, should we try to be liked as people of God? What kind of reputation should we have? Should we have the attitude and the reputation of, I don't care. I don't care what you think about me. I don't care if you like me or not. This is who I am, and this is what I believe. And if you don't like it, don't talk to me. I've probably been there before, maybe, on some things. Or are we to be, well, we got to do everything we can to make people just really like us and appreciate us. You kind of think about going to a job interview or something. Would you go to a job interview, maybe the person you're interviewing with, maybe there's a team of people, and they're not Christians, they're not believers at all, and you're trying to convince them that you're the person that's best going to fulfill the role to have this job? Would you sit down and go, yeah, these are all the things you probably don't like about me. I don't really care, but I can do this job really well. You're probably going to start questioning your team playing skills and your relational ability. And if you're a customer service person, yeah, you just blew it right there. So that we try to think then really, how are we to behave? Maybe sometimes young people go through this too, and they're trying to decide, styles and what they do amongst their friends. And we cluster a lot of times children together in schools and in sports. And one of them might do something different than the others. And sometimes there's a conflict with young people. Should I try to conform? Do I want to be liked? Do I want to stand out? Do I want to kind of be the person that says, I don't care, I'm going to do my own thing and be unique? And how does that, all filter out? Sometimes as adults, maybe we don't think about it in quite those terms, but we go through that often. As we want to think about it when it comes to our Christian faith, what we should do, because Jesus he pretty much set the expectation of what is going to come our way someday. This text that Richard read, let's just look at a couple verses again in chapter 15, verse 18. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own, but because you're not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, because of this, the world hates you. So, just by the nature of what Christianity is and what it represents, there is going to be conflict, there's going to be animosity. You perhaps have run up against this. At times in your life when you're trying to do the right thing, and then somebody just doesn't like you for that. And maybe you kind of feel the sense, you've probably heard this phrase before, but you don't even know me. But they know enough about your belief and belief system to hate you for what you believe. And that's what Jesus is saying. He's saying you can expect this. He also talks elsewhere about being light. And we know that light draws attention. It's hard to be someplace where it's dark and somebody, cracks a glow stick or a lightning bug goes by or somebody shines a little laser beam someplace, and your eyes not be drawn to whatever's given off the light. People are going to notice those who are shining in the darkness. And when that happens, oftentimes there's going to, of course, be maybe curiosity, maybe questions, but then also, I don't like that because it's something different than what we're used to. It might be something different than what somebody believes. So how do we navigate some of these things? And we think about the reputation that we need to have because we want to be a positive influence on the lives of others. We don't want to compromise our faith, but we want to integrate into life because souls are precious. And even though Jesus talked about the hatred of the world and he experienced that firsthand himself, he set that standard for us. He still went amongst the people. He still interacted with the people. He still went to the cross for all of the people on earth. And so we follow his example to be those loving people who reach out to others, even though we recognize that the world is going to hate those who follow Jesus Christ. Let's look at a few texts to try to put this in perspective. Romans chapter 14. Romans 14, verse 18. It says, "For he who in this way serves Christ is acceptable to God and approved by men." You know, Christians can develop a solid reputation amongst people in general simply by living the Christian life. Sometimes those beliefs do run contrary to what other people believe, but if you think generally speaking, Christians are striving to do what's right for God, trying to live morally right lives, trying to be kind to others, trying to be patient with others, trying to show love, trying to serve. Those are solid qualities. That would be the qualities if somebody said, that your neighbor's going to sell their house and you get to pick your neighbor. Your neighbor says, I'm going to make a deal with you. I'm going to let everybody that wants to buy my house interview with you first. And you're like, okay, that'd be a good deal. Because you're like, yeah, they're really loud and they yell at each other, or these people are hostile, or there's other characteristics. You think, I just don't know if I want them as neighbors. Like, okay, we'll find somebody else. Wouldn't that be great? We are oftentimes looked at, somebody might look at our Christian attributes and think, well, that person is a good neighbor. That person is a good friend. That person is a good employee, or that person is a good employer, because they show the attributes that Jesus Christ said were important for his followers to live out. And if we are that kind of person, then we display that in other people. That's a good guy. That's a solid woman. She knows how to practice her faith. And we appreciate those things in others. Sometimes, though, of course, because of the beliefs of Christians, shining lights in darkness, that may sour people's opinions, even when we are trying to live by godly standards. But what we want to do is develop a good reputation. Let's look at a couple ideas here. In 2 Kings chapter 5, we see this. We don't usually hit this account, this bit of incident that happened in this term that we're going to look at today. But in 2 Kings 5, remember that Naaman, he was this captain of the army. He was a person that was highly respected. He was a problem because he had leprosy. And he wanted to be able to heal this leprosy somehow, and he didn't know what to do. And so let's look at this in chapter 2 Kings 5, verse 2. The Arameans had gone out in bands and had taken captive a little girl from the land of Israel, and she waited on Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, I wish that my master were with the prophet who is in Samaria, then he would cure him of his leprosy. Naaman went in and told his master, saying, Thus and thus spoke the girl who is from the land of Israel. The king of Aram said, Go now, and I'll send a letter to the king of Israel. And he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothes. The way that these people interact with each other is interesting. Here you have a girl that seems like she was captured at a very young age and brought into slavery to serve these people. She has a heart enough that she says that she doesn't say, I wish my master would just drop dead. She says, I wish he would do this, then he would be cured. She has some kind of compassion and affection for those who she's serving in their household. And then Naaman himself, he goes and he confronts his master. He goes to the king and he's like, well, this is what I would like to do, because I hear that there's a cure in Israel for my affliction. And his reputation of who he is and the upright person that he is precedes itself. And look at what the king says. He says, I'll send a letter on your behalf. And he goes and he's going to go and give him the time to make the journey to see if it can be cured. Oftentimes you don't do that and go out of our way for people that don't have some type of good reputation. Another story of reputation found in the book of Nehemiah. In Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 1, It says in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, the wine was before him, and I took up the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had not been sad in his presence. So the king said to me, why is your face sad, though you're not sick? This is nothing but sadness of heart. And I was very much afraid. Interesting that Nehemiah had enough of a reputation with the king that the king could perceive his servant's mood changes, his facial expressions. Oftentimes we hear, and if you study history, then we see that sometimes servants, one of their primary positions in life was to be invisible. They were not to be noticed, and they were to go about their duties solemnly and quietly. But of course, Nehemiah had a special relationship. He had very close proximity quite often to the king. And it was enough that there was a recognition, like what's wrong. And he recognized something. So it scared Nehemiah a little bit because he'd never been sad in the king's presence. And so he explained the destruction that had happened in his homeland and where his heart was, that he wanted to go back and help make things better, to help make things right like they needed to be. And the king heard what he said, and the king gave him provisions, makes him governor of the land, gives him a daily allotment, says you can use all of these things, and you can have authority to make the changes that need to happen. Why would he do that? Would he do that because he was glad to get rid of him? He's like, somebody else's problem now? No. Because Nehemiah already had a solid reputation of who he was. So we take people like Nehemiah and Naaman, and we think, what happens when we make a request or we try to influence somebody, when we try to make an impact on somebody's life? If we have the reputation of being somebody that they can go to, then it's going to be a whole lot of a different type of relationship and impact than if we either say, I don't really care what they think. I don't really care anything about, I don't care what they think about me. Because certainly it sounds like Naaman was good at his job and Nehemiah was good at his job. And for those that had this relationship with, they looked at them with special characteristics, some special affection. We want to be the type of people who have a reputation that whenever we talk about something or somebody leans upon us for something, that we're reliable, that there's a reason that people can come to us. In 1 Timothy chapter 3, and talking about these qualifications for elders, Paul writes and tells Timothy he must have a good reputation with those outside the church, so that he will not fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. This just destroys the whole idea that Christians can be isolated inside their own little bubble, and we don't have to care a bit what anybody outside in the world thinks of us. We don't have to care. Well, those are the town people, or those are the commissioner people, or that's that club down the street, or that's what those people think, or you know how they are over there. We can do our own thing and snub our noses at the rest of the world. That's not what the Lord did. That's not what this characteristic is of a person who's supposed to be a leader amongst the church. They should have a good reputation with those outside the church. Isn't that an interesting quality? Because the primary duty of those who are shepherding the body is to care for the flock on the inside. But there's a reason. And he talks about so they'll not fall into reproach and snare the devil. So you have to have a good reputation. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 9. You may have thought, when are we going to read 1 Corinthians chapter 9? Maybe you did. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 19. For though I am free from all men, I've made myself a slave to all, so that I may win more. To the Jews I became as a Jew, so that I might win Jews. To those under the law, as under the law, though not being myself under the law, so that I might win those who are under the law. To those who are without law, as without law, though not being without the law of God, but under the law of Christ, so that I might win those who are without law. To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I become all things to all men, so that I may by all means save some. Not being fake, just trying to relate to people. You ever do something that really wasn't in your area of expertise just to build a relationship? Every guy, I don't know about the girl side, but every guy who's seen a young lady who he's trying to make a connection with probably might listen to music that she likes, or see a movie that she likes, or have a conversation, or go to a restaurant, or eat a food or something that she likes. Is the person being fake and dishonest by saying, sure, we'll go to that restaurant, even though it's not on their top list of where they would choose? No. They're trying to make a connection, trying to relate to people. So that's what Paul's trying to do. He's trying to relate. He didn't compromise his faith. He didn't change anything about his belief system. He knew what he believed, but he was trying to make these connections with people. He's trying to help other people to understand the gospel of Jesus Christ, trying to relate to them. Look at the importance of the relationship in Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31, we reserve this usually talking about these qualities of this wife of noble character. But there's other things in Proverbs 31 that lends outside of just the woman that's mentioned, also talking about her husband. Proverbs chapter 31, verse 23 says, her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. So primarily it's about her and her relationship. But it's letting us know that they have a supportive relationship and he has his role to play, and he's doing it. He sits among the elders of the land. And so his reputation is one that's solid. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 14. 1 Corinthians chapter 14. Again, the idea that we just can't close our doors and be isolated and say, it's all on us. We don't care what anybody else says, because Paul's concerned about those on the outside, not only with the leadership, but with the entire body. Chapter 14, verse 22 says, so then tongues are for a sign, not to those who believe, but to unbelievers. But prophecy is for a sign, not to unbelievers, but to those who believe. Therefore, if the whole church assembles together and all speak in tongues, and ungifted men or unbelievers enter, will they not say that you're mad? This time when miracles were prevalent, and this is how people displayed the teachings of God, or the power of God, he's concerned that everybody babbling at once, people are going to walk in and think, you are crazy. He's concerned about the view that the outsider has to the body. And so he's telling him this is where we get the idea of things being done decently and in order. He's telling them what it is that needs to take place. So it's important. Orderly worship is one of these things that let the world know you're not out of your mind. You're not crazy. Don't be trying to be self-serving as these people were, or to show off the gifts, but to do things in some type of orderly way. We want to have that solid reputation. Colossians chapter 3, verse 23, whatever you do, do your work heartily as for the Lord, rather than for men. So we know that what we do for the Lord. So we have standards. We don't compromise. We want to be people who are stable, who are dependable, who are kind, who are loving, who are serving. And so we think as much as we can do within the law of Christ, we should do. We should work to get the respect. They may not oftentimes love us, but maybe we can get the respect of the world. To have people look and go, those folks are upright. They're upstanding. Maybe they won't agree with our biblical understanding of morality. Maybe they won't agree with our biblical understanding of authority or worship to God or relationships within the body. but perhaps we can show some attribute that will cause them to want to know more, want to hear more, and trust that we haven't shut the door in their face, but we've kept the door open for continual communication. Jesus said to us that darkness hates the light. And some won't like the message we share or the lifestyle. And this has been true for people who tried to serve God all the way back since the days of Cain. In John chapter 15, verse 25, Jesus said they hated him without a cause. And if they hated Jesus Christ, perfect Son of God, creator of all things, without a cause, then certainly they're probably going to hate those who say they belong to him. There's going to be times that people just say they don't understand. I don't understand you Christians. You guys are crazy. Or why do you believe this? Or why do you follow that book? Or why do you do this on Sunday? Or why do you practice this? It's kind of like we don't understand other things that other people do either. Maybe you don't understand how somebody could walk around a golf course all day. Maybe you don't understand how somebody could work on their truck, their car, or their motorcycle all day. Maybe you don't understand how somebody could get up on a Saturday morning in the dark and go on a nice long run. Maybe you don't understand how somebody could sit in a fishing boat bobbing around all day. Maybe there's times that you look at somebody and say, I don't get it. I don't know how they can like that. But guaranteed, the first time that somebody needs their vehicle worked on, you're going to call the guy that works in their garage all day. Somebody wants to get on a health and fitness thing, they're going to say, I'm going to call that guy that rides his bike all the time. Somebody wants to do something, like, you know what? A young guy goes, my girlfriend, she's really into golf, but I don't know anything. You're going to go to the guy that golfs all day. You may not have understood it before, but you respect what they do. There's going to be times when the world, even though they said, I don't get it, I don't get you, I don't get why you do what you do, there are going to be times when they have loss, when somebody passes from this life, or they experience loss, or they have health problems, or they don't know which direction to turn, or there's sorrow, or there's anxieties and fears, and there's loss of job, or there's relationship problems. They might go to the most stable person that they know. The person who's the Christian, the person who has followed Jesus, the person who's been this rock all through their lives. Maybe they mocked you. They didn't want to hear what you had to say. But they look at you and think, I know they've been through some of this, and they've stood firm. They may go to you at that time and say, hey, I'm going through this. What does your Bible say about that? What's your take on this? Does God really say anything about how I can get through this issue that's going on? You can be the one that they turn to because they saw something different in you. Because you took the time and you took a life to build your reputation as a faithful child of God that others can look to. So when people look to us, we ask the question, should Christians try to be liked and respected? Yes. If they don't like walking in the light, then we can't do anything about that. But we should try to reach out to others and build those connections and relationships, because that's what Jesus did and what's pleasing to him. If you're here this morning and you need to respond to the gospel message, if you're ready to put on Christ in baptism, we encourage you to do that now. If we can help you with anything, let us know while we stand and sing.